I'm Rosalie Gage-Gray. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA. The CPFSA has a mandate for children who are deemed to be in need of care and protection. We are an agency of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. And the children we serve are children who have been abused, abandoned, neglected, or otherwise at risk, and we provide services for them in the varying programs that we have within the agency. Now, from a reporting standpoint, legally, persons who know suspect that an abuse have occurred should report this to the National Children's Registry. The registry gets about 1,200 cases per month. That's pre-pandemic, over 1,000 reports of abuse, and children who have behavioral issues, most likely because of the trauma that they would have suffered. Children exhibiting mental health issues. And so the services we provide is in an effort to ensure that all children are protected. The law gives the parents the primary responsibility for the raising and upbringing of their children. And if with support they can continue to carry out those functions, then that support should be given. In the event that there are instances of abuse against the children, then our mandate is to investigate the circumstance. If confirmed, we have to do the risk assessment to see whether or not the child can remain in that placement. Are there other family members who could assume care, or other programs? There are foster care programs. So the judge is the one who, with the report submitted, make a determination if these children should become what is called wards of the state or be given a fit person order, which says that the minister, since there's no parent or guardian who is fit, then the minister takes that responsibility, and that's delegated to us to carry out those services. We did a knowledge and attitude survey as to people's knowledge of child protection, of the agencies that are responsible. It said 1 in 10 persons said that if they knew of abuse, they would report it. And if we should extrapolate from that, if 1 in 10 would report, and we are getting 1,000 odd, we estimate that there might be others there that are unreported. We have the whole range of programs, be it at the primary, tertiary, or secondary level. At the primary level, it's educational, promotional, public relations. At the tertiary level, it is where children who have been abused need the intervention. And so we have, I'll start with our first responders program. And this is a program that is helping us to be there as early as possible once an incident occurs. So if a mother or father has been killed, there's upsurge of violence in the community where children are affected, there is a fire that would have caused some damage and children are affected, whatever incident in the communities, then we as first responders, along with the police, along with victim services, would go in and would offer some first response in terms of grief and bereavement counseling, for example. Offering immediate relief, in terms of food or otherwise. Providing that kind of a support. And in a more longer term, if the children are deemed to be in need of care and protection, to provide that safe haven for them. So if we can go in as early as possible to put that early support, we believe it has been helping children to cope and for them to remain within their own environment. It's always a traumatic circumstance to remove children from their usual circumstance, but we do know that there are instances when this is, it's unavoidable. But we must emphasize that our mandate and our strategies are geared towards maintaining children in their families and providing the support there for them. We have our foster care program, which is where we have foster carers within the communities, persons who have offered themselves to take care of children. We take them through a training and vetting process, and then children are placed with them. This is a temporary arrangement, unlike adoption, which is a more permanent. So the rights of the children are not transferred to the foster carers. But in terms of adoption, once the adoption is formalized through the courts, then the parental rights are transferred to the persons who have adopted. So children come to us And our efforts is to get them back home. So we have our reintegration program. So they might come to us for whatever the needs are, and we would have worked with them, whether through counseling and therapy, or it could be a case where for their safekeeping, the perpetrator might still be at large, and you need to have them safe. Then you might keep them for a while, and then they are reintegrated. But we still track and follow them for a period of time. We have our children and family support unit, which we found that a lot of the time people just needed a little support, help. And so it could be a case where you have a teenager who is not getting along with parents, mother, father, and through some counseling and help to build that relationship, then the child can go back home. We also, through that unit, do referrals. Sometimes people don't know how to access the services, whether of government or otherwise. They don't know about them, one, and they don't know how to access them. So they might come, you give them a letter and say, okay, go down to path office, and they go and they get a hard time. You want to make sure that you are the bridge to get them to the services. And so our efforts in the CFSU is to forge partnerships with as many stakeholders as possible, that when we do get our clients, we can refer them. Most of our efforts are at the tertiary level, unfortunately, where children have already been subjected to abuse or are at risk, because we get the reports through the NCR. Our proactive work and advocacy work is to educate and to inform the public as to what rights children have. Part of the challenge we have with violence against children is that there is not an appreciation that they have rights. They're not little people. There should not be, this phrase about being seen and not heard. They have voices, and the rights give them a voice that they should be heard. And in circumstances where decisions are going to be taken about them, they should be involved, age appropriately, of course. As long as the child is able to participate in that decision making, then their voices should be heard in making those decisions. So through our family support unit, as we have seen, a lot of people who just want access to services and information, or we have parents who just need to get some training to know what to do. We oftentimes assume that people know. They don't. We have to tell them. And we have to tell them again, because they might not remember. Or in the circumstance, you might just act out of terms because you don't know, or because of the level of frustration that you might be experiencing. Now, because of the level of violence, whether directly affecting them or violence in a community that affects them in a general sense, then you want to ensure that the children are resilient.
We hate the violence that is making children so afraid. The violence that is taking their lives.
Many of us are being bullied. Many of us are being beaten. Many of us are being sexually and emotionally abused.
Sometimes they bear so much more than we would imagine that a child can bear. Because of the trauma suffered, then you have the whole issue of psychosocial and mental health issues. That's a big area of concern for us. Not just that the children themselves are suffering, but parents. And during the pandemic, we are seeing more and more parents who are suffering from mental health or psychosocial issues that needs to be addressed for them to have full custody and control of their children. Some of the root causes of violence against children we would consider to be cultural. One major area of violence, and it's debatable in Jamaica as to whether or not that is corporal punishment. We have the culture, we beat it into them and we beat it out of them. So you use the same kind of a strategy to correct a child. So if they are not behaving well or you want them to behave better, then you're going to beat them. And culturally, people say, well, I get beaten and nothing ever happened to me. But the research has shown, and especially for smaller children, the research says that it is the smaller children who get the beating. And it is the smaller ones who have it has a greater impact on. So culturally, it's something that we're grappling with. We believe that we need to have it banned fully, but we believe that we need the public education and we need to preach the alternatives to corporal punishment so that persons can know what to do. Sometimes it is that the children themselves, especially children who are on the autistic spectrum, and the behavior is misunderstood because the children have not been screened and assessed to see exactly what is happening. You think about this in the school setting as well, where you might think that the child is a slow learner or is, just not coping in the classroom, giving too much trouble, but have the child been assessed to see what exactly is the issue, and then having the persons trained to be able to respond. There are certain myths about reproductive health and sexual diseases, STIs, where they feel that having sex with a younger child will cure some of these diseases. So that's why you have older men going to little girls and babies, because they feel that this will cure them. The family planning institutions have been doing the public education to kind of get these myths out of the way. We have dysfunctional families. By dysfunctional, we mean families who, based on their economic circumstances, might not be able to cope and care adequately, or they might have conflict within the families. There's domestic violence within the families, which cause the children to be so impacted and affected. Poverty is also a concern, but we know a lot of poor families who are able to raise effective children, So it is, how do you get parents to understand and appreciate that children have rights? I think the lack of knowledge of the rights that the children have, so basic needs, but also to all the other, having right to education, to proper health, is going to be critical to how we address the issue of violence against them. The legislation and the punishment that is legislated in terms of persons who have been convicted of violence against our children, I think the laws have been sufficiently amended. Primary piece of legislation, as the Child Care and Protection Act, is now under review to strengthen some of those areas. So we have to approach it from two ends. From the prosecution side, you need to pay for what you have done. But how do we also build the capacity for them to function and to continue? Children spend a great amount of time in school. So we believe that educators, teachers, guidance counselors, those in the school system, have a great role to play in assisting with the reduction. Sensitizing them to what is child abuse, what are the signs to look out for, how do they make reports if they should see these. So how do we ensure that they understand that their role? And we usually say you are on the side of the child. You have to take the side of the child. It must be in the best interest of the child. And that's a principle in the Child Care and Protection Act, that whatever we do should be in the child's best interest. And so we have good partnerships with the schools so that we can all build this wall of safeguarding around our children. So they have a very vast role to play. The actions of a child are not arbitrary. There's usually something behind it, and it is that something behind it that we seek to go after, to mend and to move forward.